Today we're going to discuss the, uh, the one of the last two topics, and this is capital budgeting. The other one will be discussed on Wednesday, which is cost of capital. Capital budgeting is in chapter 5 and 6 of your textbook. Okay, so please read through this. Kasi these questions will be coming from this one sa last quiz natin sa Saturday at 2 o'clock. Okay, please don't miss that quiz. Okay, so we have discussed this actually before already. So our discussion of this will be just a more of a review. So sabi natin that when companies make a project or engage in a project or plan to have a project, and they would like to determine whether that project is feasible or not, then they make use of certain measures, and one of them is the net present value. So net present value, guys, is a very important measure to determine whether a project is feasible or not. Okay, so sabi natin na if the net present value is positive, then it's okay to push through with the project. Otherwise, if it's negative, then it's not okay to push through with the project. Okay, so how do you compute for the net present value, guys? So we're going to look at it later on. There are other measures like a payback period or IRR, which are used in determining whether a capital budgeting project, when you say capital budgeting, guys, it's long-term. It does not only involve the current operating period, but it involves operating periods more than the current. So pwedeng 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, okay, usually 5 years, minsan 10 years or even more. So the first one is the net present value measure. So we learned this before, that the net present value is simply getting the present values of all your cash flows. So ganun lang yun. Tapos sabi natin na kapag yung net present value is positive, then it's okay to push through with the project. And if not, then we reject that project which has a negative net present value because it will destroy the value of the shareholders. Okay, so this is based on a survey on the percentage of CFOs who use these measures. Number one, halos tied si NPV at saka si IRR. It's almost the same. just a less than 1% difference. So 57% use payback period. Profitability Index, konti lang gumagamit. No? So this tells us of the importance of these measures. Of course, before sinabi natin na mas theoretically correct si NPV as compared to IRR. Okay, 3 points to remember about NPV. Number one, NPV utilizes the concept that 1 peso today is more than 1 peso tomorrow, which is particularly the time value of money. So kaya okay na gamitin si NPV as a decision rule kasi it's consistent with the time value of money principle. Secondly, net present value depends solely on forecasted cash flows and the opportunity cost of capital or the WACC. So how do we compute for NPV? Kailangan, guys, i-forecast muna. And hindi ginagamit yung income, ang ginagamit yung cash flows. Sabi nga natin, ang first week natin, in finance, cash flow is king. That's a fundamental principle in finance. So when we assess a project, we do not use net income after tax, but rather we use cash flows. Thirdly, additive ang net present value. So which means that we can combine two projects, A and B, and their individual present values are just the sum. The sum of the total project is simply the individual sum, the sum of the individual NPVs. For example, NPV has and A has a value of NPV equal to 10, tapos si B, ang NPV niya 20, so the total NPV of the project is just 30. So you just add the two, kasi additive ang net present value. Okay, so may iba pang measures, guys. Isa yung accounting rate of return, okay, which is not so much used kasi this violates the time value of money principle. So ang ginagamit lang dito yung net income divided by yung assets na ginamit, no? So it's not so much used, but this is just the formula. And sabi natin ang weakness nito, it does not consider the time value of money. Payback naman guys, dalawang klase yan, yung discounted payback at saka payback. Now the discounted payback is the better method of the two. Okay, kasi si payback guys, what we use is the original cash flows, and then we just add the original cash flows, which means that we violate the time value of money principle. Okay? So for example, ito, kunyari project A, ang initial investment 2,000. At the end of year 1, ang cash inflow 500, year 2 500, year 3 5,000. So we notice that if we add cash flow at 1 and cash flow at 2, 1,000 pa lang yan. So hindi pa nare-recover yung initial investment na 2,000. Sa year 3 na marirecover. Kasi sa year 3, ang cash flow natin 5,000. Okay? Ang kailangan na lang natin sa year 3, ma-recover yung balance na 1,000. Kasi sa first 2 years na nag-1,000 na tayo. Okay? So what we add are the cash flows. Ang problema niyan guys, technically hindi natin pwedeng i-add C1 at saka si C2 because they belong to different time frames. But still guys, ginagamit pa rin yun, no? Yung payback period. Okay? So, meron isa pa yung discounted payback period. So sa discounted payback period, ang gagawin, kukunin mo na yung mga present values nito, saka, and then that's the time to compute for your payback, so which we call discounted payback. Okay, so between the two, sabi natin na mas maganda si discounted payback. Okay, tinan nyo ito, no? Yung 5,000 at 500 na to, kinuha mo na yung present value niya. Yung 500 at year 2, kinuha mo na yung present value niya. Okay, and then that's the time we compute for the payback period, which we call discounted payback period. Okay, third is the, aside from NPV, also your accounting return, also your payback period, meron din tayong IRR. Okay, so IRR, internal rate of return. Okay, so there's a way to compute IRR. And yung pag-compute ng IRR, guys, dati nung hindi pa namin ginagamit yung Excel, napaka-iterative yan. Trial and error. No? Trial and error yung approach yan. Kasi yung IRR is that rate of return where your net present value is equal to 0. Okay, so magka-trial and error tayo, hahanapin natin ano ba yung rate of return where the net present value is equal to 0. Okay, so that's your IRR. Okay, now if you take a look at this diagram, when is a project feasible based on IRR? Tingnan niyo itong NPV at saka discount rate profile. Ito. Okay, so on the x-axis is your WACC or your discount rate. On the y-axis is your NPV. Now, ito guys, this is your IRR. And we know this is the IRR because it touches the x-axis. And at the x-axis, your net present value is equal to 0. Ito. So sabi natin, consistent yung definition. The IRR is that rate of return where your net present value is equal to 0. Okay, so when is a project feasible? A project is feasible when the IRR is less than when the IRR is less than the weighted average cost of capital. And greater than pala, sorry. In other words, the IRR guys should be greater than your WACC. Bakit? Dun sa mga projects where your IRR is greater than your WACC, that's the point where your net present value is 0, is positive. Diba? To the left of the IRR, you notice that this is the region where your net present value are positive. To the right of IRR, okay, so pag yung WACC natin mas malaki pa kaysa IRR, then yung mga net present values natin, they're all negative. Okay, so this diagram tells us guys kung kailan guys masasabi natin na acceptable yung project in terms of IRR. So when the IRR is greater than WACC, okay tayo. When the IRR is less than WACC, then reject that project. Okay, so that's the decision rule there. Now, sometimes guys, nagko-conflict si IRR at saka si NPV. Sabi natin, always follow the NPV. Okay, by virtue of the more correct, theoretically sound principle in computing for the NPV. Okay? Now, sometimes a project may have two IRRs. Tingnan nyo to. Itong plot na to. Which is different from this one. Ito sa project po guys, isa lang yung IRR, no? Isa lang. No? It's not expected that this will again go up. Okay. Now, ito naman, dalawang IRRs, no? Ito at saka ito, because it touches the x-axis 2 times. And when does that happen? That happens when you have a negative cash flow at the intervening time period. Okay? Kunyari ito, siyempre sa simula, sa time 0, expected na ang cash flow niya negative. Kasi maglalabas ng investment dyan. Ito from year 1 to year 10, notice na may nagka-negative ng cash flow. Dito sa year 10, negative. No? Or pwedeng in between, anywhere in between. When that happens, when you have a negative cash flow after year 0, then chances are, guys, magkakaroon tayo ng dalawang IRR as happened here. So dito pinakita. We'll show this in a while. No? Okay, then we know that projects can either be independent or mutually exclusive. Pag mutually exclusive, guys, ang sabi natin dyan, pipili tayo ng mas mataas na IRR. Kasi the choice of one will exclude the other. So kunyari, you have two projects here, D and E. So the NPV of project D at 10% is this one. Si E naman ito. Then pipiliin natin si project E kasi mas mataas yung NPV niya. Okay. If these were independent projects, then pwedeng piliin pareho. Kasi pareho namang positive yung NPV niya. Okay. It depends lang kung may budget yung company na more than 30,000 in this case. Okay. So those are specific guidelines. No? And then later on, guys, titingnan natin, dalawang projects na kino-compare. we're going to learn kailan indifferent tayo dun sa dalawang projects. Because if we take a look at the NPV profile of project F, yung blue, at saka yung G, yung brown, makikita natin that they have this intersection, itong intersection na to. This intersection is what we call the crossover point. It means that at this rate of return, kung ito yung WACC natin, it doesn't matter whether you choose project F or project G kasi pareho yung NPV nila. But below this WACC, below this rate of return, choose project G. Okay? Dapat piliin si project G. Bakit? Kasi mas mataas yung NPV ni project G, yung brown one, versus the blue one. Okay? On the other hand, below this crossover point, pipiliin si project F. Kasi mas mataas yung NPV ni F vis-a-vis project Z. And then, if the WACC is more than 36.3%, reject na pareho. Kasi beyond this, pareho na negative yung NPV nila. And beyond 25%, guys, reject na si from 25% to 36.3%, ang choice natin si project F, okay? And not project Z because beyond 25%, guys, yung NPV ni project Z negative na. Okay. All right. So that's about it, guys. Sa project sa chapter 5. Okay, here are just more examples. Okay. So that ends discussion in chapter 5. Summary na. No? Okay, so chapter 6 naman. Okay, so sinasummarize ko lang, guys, kung ano yung laman ng chapters 5 and 6. You have to read these chapters, guys, kasi yung concepts yung kailangan, no? Let's go to chapter 6. Mas maikli yung chapter 6. What's important in chapter 6 is how the cash flows are computed. So let's just take a look very quickly at how the cash flows are computed. Kasi kung walang cash flows, di ba? Hindi natin mako-compute yung NPV or IRR. So these are the most important points here. Okay, number 1, guys, ang ginagamit yung cash flows, no? hindi yung net income. Then we use discounted cash flows. Pag sinabing discounted, we get the present values. Then incremental cash flows ang ginagamit. Yung incremental cash flows, guys, it means that pag may mga sunk cost na, pag may mga cost na nagawa na in the past, hindi na relevant yun, wag na isasama yun. That should not be included in the computation for capital budgeting. Okay, then we have provision for inflation. Okay, and then for taxes, but we're not going to go into that. And titingnan lang natin, guys, yung investment at saka yung financing decisions. Okay, so the three, okay, sandali ha. Okay, so discussion yan ng 5, no? Okay, can we read those? Okay, and then dito, okay, tax, not so much. Kahit skip nyo na yung tax kasi hindi naman ano sa atin yan. Okay, ito. Ito guys, ito yung importante sa atin. Yung 3 elements of project cash flows. So kasi ang binibigay ko sa inyo yung resulta ng cash flows, no? yung final values na. Pero how is it computed? So there are 3 main parts of the projected cash flows. Number 1, cash flow from the capital investment, yung initial investment. Number 2, cash flow from the results of the operations, yung operating. Number 3, cash flow from changes in working capital. Okay, so yung tatlong yun, guys, these are the elements that make up your capital budgeting cash flows. First is your capital investment. Pangalawa, operating cash flow. Pangatlo, investment in working capital. So may example dito, guys, yung IMC. IMC. So may proposed investment siya, and the cost of that is 12,000. Okay, so may mga iba pa bang cost involved doon? Okay. Kunyari may old equipment sila, tapos ibebenta yon, dapat kasama yon sa pag-compute ng capital investment. Kasi it's a cash inflow, or pag binenta nila tapos sobra ba yung pagbenta nila sa book value, then may tax implications yun. But we're not going to look at them. Okay, so it suffice to say that you need to compute for the capital investment. Pangalawa, you need to compute for the operating cash flow. Saan nanggagaling yun? Ifo-forecast yung revenues. No? So with this, kunyari new equipment na to, ano mangyayari sa revenues natin? Tataas ba siya? Okay? Kung tataas siya, ano yung increase? Kasi dapat ang titingnan lang natin yung incremental. Kunyari, kung walang bagong equipment, ang revenue, ang sales for year 1, 100. Pero kung may bagong equipment, kung pinalitan natin yung old equipment, ang magiging revenues 120. Therefore, ang titingnan lang natin doon yung incremental. 120 minus 100. Yung 220 lang yung titingnan natin. Kasi nga, sabi natin na sa capital budgeting, yung incremental cash flow is what's important. Okay? Kung bagong equipment to, so wala tayong increment na tinitingnan. So lahat to papasok. So if you take a look at the computation here, nag-income statement siya, yung usual na income statement. So sa dulo, so andyan dyan yung revenues, tapos yung mga costs, other costs, depreciation, tapos may tax, tapos yung net income after tax. Ito, yung 11. Net income after tax. And after that, it has to be converted into cash flow by adding back depreciation. So that's what I was saying ito here a while ago. No? Ang tinitingnan natin yung operating cash flow, hindi yung net income. So the net income has to be computed but it has to be converted into cash flow. And then ito yung gagamitin ngayon sa capital budgeting. Okay, and thirdly, tinitingnan din yung working capital. Ito yung changes ng net current assets at current liabilities. Okay? So papasok dito 'yon. Okay, and then what do we do now? We will add now yung tatlong components, yung initial investment, yung column 4 dito, row 4, yung operating cash flow, yung row 12, at saka yung working capital, yung work 15. So ipagsasama-sama yan. Okay? And then, so you now have your cash flows. No? And then we now get the discounted cash flow and then come up with the net present value. Okay, so that's how we compute, guys, for the projected cash flows. Okay, so ito another example. No? All right, so that's what we need to know in chapter 6. Okay, so ito ano lang guys, yung again more about ano lang, NPV lang, which we already discussed. NPV lang to. And then last is, yun na, naka-summarize na. Okay, so chapter 6, yun lang yung kailangan natin tingnan. Okay, yung different methods, tapos how the cash flows are generated. Okay, so any questions about that, guys? Ano naman, please. Kung okay siya. Paki-chat naman, please, kung yes, which means okay. So you have to read the chapter. No? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Amy. The rest, guys. Okay, good. Thank you, guys. Thank you. All right, kindly open out the Excel file that I shared with you. Okay, some of these concepts, guys, we already discussed before. So medyo mas madali lang tayo dito, no? Okay. All right. So let's do this, guys. Lagyan natin ng mga pangalan yung mga ano natin, yung mga values para mas mabilis natin na makuha yung mga formulas. Let's call this WACC. Ito. So here I'm at row 24, no? I'll call this WACC. WACC. Okay, enter. So may pangalan na tayo dito. Okay, let's call this, okay, I'll call it, itong set na to, cash flows Y. No? So that's for project Y. Cash flows Y. Ito ang tawagin natin na investment ni Y. No? Investment ni Y. Okay, for this one, I'll call this cash flows. Cash flows Y. Ito tawagin natin cash flows Z. Cash flows Z. Tapos ito we call it Z. Investments. Put it here. Investment Z. Okay. All right. You have two projects, guys. Project Y and Project Z. They have their own cash flows. Now, how do you decide which of these projects are feasible or not? So, depende, guys, kung independent sila. Tapos wala namang kunyaring, if there are no constraints sa budget, then as long as the net present value is positive, then okay sila. But if they're mutually exclusive, okay, so pipili tayo ng mas malaking net present value. Right. So how do we compute for the net present value? The long cut is this, no? Kunin natin yung present values nila. So we have done this formula before. I'll call it negative PV. And the rate is your WACC. Type natin ng WACC. Okay. Enter natin. So magsisimula tayo dito sa times 0, comma. And then future value natin is this one. Ay, sorry. PMT. This is not a PMT, comma. And then future value. There. Ay, wait. Bakit? Dapat dito muna. Sorry. Yan. Okay, so kamali ako dito. Hindi natin madadrag to. Sige, tanggalin muna natin itong investment in Y. Sorry about that, guys. So Control F3. Control F3 will be the names that we gave to ourselves. Let's first remove sige, pwede na rin yan, no? Magdadalawang formulas na tayo dito. Negative PV, rate is WACC. WACC, and then N per is 0, comma, Walang PMT. Future value is this one, investment in Y. And enter. And then we will just have to copy this formula. Control C. Okay. Kasi hindi natin pwedeng i-copy to the right. Yun ang disadvantage minsan ng mga names. Kasi it has to move here. There. And this has to be this one. Okay, so nagdalawang formulas na lang ako dito. Okay. Okay, pause muna ako guys. Your option guys can be to delete muna yung pangalan ng investment in Y. Kasi if we did this guys, ang mangyayari, pag kinapin natin to the right to, hindi siya aalis dito sa initial investment. We need the value to move to 420, 480, etc. So we can now compute for the net present value. It's just the sum of your present values. Okay, pause muna ako guys. So if you have any questions, feel free to chat now.
Sir, can you show the formula in the cell for B28?
B28. Okay. Kasi linagyan natin ng pangalan yung investment in Y, no? Kaya when I highlighted this one, okay, linagay niya yung pangalan. Ang disadvantage ito guys, hindi natin siya makakopy to the right kasi nakafix siya dito sa investment in Y. We need to copy it to the right para yung gumalaw dito sa 420, 480, etc. So kung gusto nyo, tanggalin natin muna yung investment in Y. Pwede natin tanggalin yan. How do you do that? Control F3. Okay. So ito, tatanggalin natin to. Remove this name. Delete na lang muna natin pati si Z. Delete na lang natin. Delete. Dinelete ko siya. So anong nangyari? Nawala na to, no? So highlight natin to. And then we can copy this to the right now. Pwede natin gawin, wait natin dito.
Sir, can you also highlight for 28C? Because I think I got my set formula wrong.
28Z, 28 what?
C. So C.
C. C. Copy lang yun.
Thank you, sir. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the question. Thank you. Okay, so sino pa? Guys, did you get this? NPV of 159,856. Just by adding the present values. Thank you. Okay, and before guys, if you recall, we learned how to compute for the net present values without having to compute for the present values of each. No? So NPV lang yan. Sabi natin ang rate natin yung WACC. WACC, and then ang values natin will be excluding yung initial. No? Kasi future cash flows to. There. Which is your cash flows Y. No? Ito lang. And then plus this one. Okay? So pareho lang. No? Pareho lang. Okay, So dito guys, just to facilitate our computation, I'm going to put here investment in Y and then here investment in Z. Tapos ito yung gagawin kong ito yung gagawin kong investment in Y at investment in Z. Okay, kasi mamaya mas kailangan natin itong mga to, no? Okay, and then I'm going to Control Shift F3. Okay, create names from the values of the left column. Okay, so I'm going to call this investment in Y, investment in Z. Okay. All right, so may pangalan na to. Yan, investment in Y. Ito, investment in Z. All right, so let's now get, ito guys, pwede natin copy na lang to, no? And i-fix natin to. Itong values na to guys, i-fix natin sa 25. Sa row 25. Okay, para hindi siya aalis sa row 25, para pwede natin i-copy dito sa Z. No? Control Enter. Okay. I fixed the row 25 here kasi pwede natin i-copy dito yung sa Z. No? So Control C, Control V. There you go. Okay. So this is our formula. For project Z. Then once again, we can copy this, Control C, Control V. Pwede natin i-copy na lang. Sinam up lang naman to, no? And this is equal to, pwede rin copy to. Oops, mali. Cash flow Z dapat to. Okay, so let me pause for a while, guys, and allow you to catch up and do the formula. Any questions, guys? Kindly chat, please, if you were able to get the answers. Would appreciate feedback from you guys so that I know if you're able to follow along or am I going too fast? Good, thank you. All right. So based on NPV, guys, we said that if the projects were independent, okay pareho. Kasi parehong positive yung NPV nila. NPV of project Y is 159,000, NPV of project Z is 244. However, if the projects were mutually exclusive, then we choose only project Z. Okay, kasi the choice of one excludes the other. Sabihin natin, these are, we're choosing between two equipment. Parehong use nila. So if these are mutual exclusive, then project Z yung ano natin, yung pipiliin. Okay, any questions about this, guys?
None, sir.
Okay, thank you. Next, we compute for the profitability index. Okay, ano yung profitability index, guys? If you take a look at this formula, so this is the sum of your cash flows, no? From T is equal to 1 to N. Ibig sabihin nito guys, ang ina-add natin, itong this is discounted, no? So mga present values from period 1 up to period N. So ibig sabihin yung mga inflows lang. And then i-divide natin ng initial investment, which is our outflow. Okay, so let's do this. So ano ba yung present value of inflows ni Project Y? This natin pwedeng gamitin guys, sum ng cash flows, yan. Yan, sum of cash flows ni Y. Ito yung usefulness, no? 'Di ba yung cash flows ni Y, ito 'yon. Ito, no? Pero mali, no? Kasi dapat hindi, no? Hindi dapat yung cash flows, dapat linagyan din natin ng pangalan yung discounted cash flows, pero never mind. So we just add guys ito, no? Ang ina-add natin yung mga discounted cash flows kasi tingnan itong formula, discounted yung mga pinapa-add sa atin. Okay? And then saan galing to? Okay, ito yung initial investment natin, no? Yung 1-2, no? 1-2. While on the other hand, for project Z, okay, we sum up all this one, the present values of your cash flows. There. And then yung initial investment natin is 1.8, no? A present value din yan, remember, ha? Present value. So the index is, just divide. Okay. All right. So based on the profitability index, turns out that project Z is better. Project Z is better kasi sa bawat piso ng investment, guys, project Z is generating 1.136, no? 1.136 present value of cash inflows. Project Y only generates 1.133. Okay, so based on NPV, okay si Project Z. Based on profitability index, okay si Project Z. Okay, any questions, guys? All right. So, sige. Next, we go to internal rate of return, IRR. So, how do we decide based on IRR? Okay, one good thing, guys, pwede na natin computein yung IRR kay Excel, no? Unlike before, ang ginagawa pa namin, nagmamanual pa kami nito and it's quite tedious to compute for the IRR manually. So, we can do this, IRR. Ano yung values natin? Lahat ng values natin, no? Ito. So this is for project Y. Yung total niyan. Then ignore the guess. Okay, gawin natin percentage to. Decimal places. 18.23. And then we can ask ourselves, what is the NPV? How much is the net present value if your rate of return is equal to IRR? Okay. So we will use the IRR as our rate of return. Okay. All right. So we can see here, guys, that tama, no? Yung ito IRR ni Project Y to eh. Yung NPV at the IRR at 18.23 is equal to 0. So that's what the another definition of NPV. The NPV is that rate of return where your net present value is equal to 0. And here we can see that. No? Okay, how about Project Z? Let's get the IRR of Project Z. Ang values natin are again the original time series. And then ignore the guess. Copy natin yung format nito. Okay. And then let's compute, guys, kung ano yung NPV at a rate of 17.39. Values. Format printer. Oops. Sorry. Ito pala dapat. Okay. So IRR of Project Y is 18.23%. IRR of Project Z is 17.39%. And we were able to prove that for Project Y, IRR is 18.23%. The NPV at that rate is 0. Ganun din kay Project Z. Ang IRR ni Project Z, 17.39. Ang NPV ni Z at that level of rate is 0. Okay, so tama yung concept na the IRR is that rate of return where the net present value is equal to 0. Okay, so sabi natin dito, ang conclusion natin, based on IRR, which project is better? Both Project Y and Z are acceptable, no? Why? Why are they both acceptable? They're both higher than the weighted average cost of capital of 12.6%. Si 18.23 mas mataas dyan, no? Si 17.39 kay Z is higher than the WACC. So both of them are acceptable. Okay. Now, if these projects were mutually exclusive, then sabi natin, ang pipiliin natin based on IRR is Project Y. Bakit si Project Y? Kasi guys, mas mataas yung IRR ni Y kaysa kay Z. So just based on IRR alone, mas maganda si Project Y. However, guys, sabi natin may mga sabi natin constraints or limitations yung IRR kasi when you compute for IRR, there are certain assumptions that you make which might not necessarily be true, no? Or it might be a very strict constraint. So there's another measure called MIRR. So let's compute that, no? Let's compute for the MIRR of Project Y. So we use modified internal rate of return. Okay? So sa MIRR, ang values natin will be the same. So for Y, it's all the cash flows. All the cash flows, and then, comma, ang finance rate natin will be your WACC. Okay? And then the reinvestment rate will be your WACC. Okay, so ito yung difference ni IRR at saka MIRR. Si IRR, ang reinvestment rate natin, ang ginagamit yung IRR mismo. Okay, si MIRR, ang ginagamit na in reinvestment rate yung WACC. So that's the difference there. Control Enter. Tapos, copy natin percent. Control C yung oops, no? Let me copy the format, just the format. Okay. So MIRR ni Y is 15.45%. How about CZ, MIRR? Okay, once again, the values for Z are itong lahat ng cash flows niya. Dapat linagyan natin ng pangalan niya para mas madali. And then, finance rate is WACC then. The investment rate is also WACC. Yeah. Okay, Control Enter. Copy the format. Okay. So based on MIRR, sino mas maganda? Mas maganda si Project Z. Its MIRR is higher than the MIRR of Project Y. So this tells us that the MIRR will always be consistent with the net present value. Okay, so based on MIRR, we choose Project Z since it has the higher modified internal rate of return. Okay, and if we compute for the NPV at their at their MIRRs, pwede natin i-compute yan. NPV using the MIRR of Y, and then yung values natin, again guys, only the future cash flows, and then we add ito. Okay, so ang NPV ni Y at the MIRR is 74,705. Cash flows ni Y. Okay. On the other hand, ito si Project Z, ang NPV niya, ang rate natin is this one, yung MIRR natin, comma, values yung cash flows ni Z. Okay. Plus natin yung initial investment, no? Yung 1.8. Okay. Okay, so here we can see that the net present value of Z at MIRR is greater than the net present value of Z of Y at its MIRR. So this shows guys na mas talaga, mas okay na gamitin natin it's better to opt for Project Z by virtue of having a higher NPV and a higher MIRR. So this is a case where there's a conflict between the results of MIRR, NPV, and the IRR. Pag wala naman difference, then walang problema. No? There will be no difference. Okay, when you have a situation like this where the IRR gives a different result, it means guys na may crossover to. I don't know if you recall the crossover na sinabi ko kanina. Ito yung crossover. No? Let me just flash that. Crossover. Ito guys, no? When there's a conflict between NPV and IRR, ganito yung niya yung, and we call this the NPV profile. Okay, so it means that for a particular range of discount rate of weighted average cost of capital, mas maganda yung isang project. At a particular range naman, mas maganda naman yung isa pang project. So malamang ganito yung NPV profile nun. No? Kapag nagko-conflict yung NPV at saka IRR. Otherwise guys, kung walang conflict doon, then always yung isang project will be higher than the other one. 'Di ba? Ito in-explain natin. At this is the crossover rate, no? Ito yung equal sila ng NPV. But lower than this, guys, mas maganda si project G. Higher than this crossover rate, mas maganda si project F, which we're going to do in a while. Okay, so let me go back here. Okay, clear guys? Clear yung MIRR natin? Any questions? Paki-chat naman please kung clear so far. Any clarifications? Any questions? Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you so much for your feedback. All right, then let's go to the last one, guys, yung payback period natin. Sabi natin dalawang klaseng payback, yung ordinary na payback at saka yung discounted payback. The difference between them is that itong si ordinary payback o yung payback mismo, ang ginagamit natin yung original cash flows. And then we add them. No? Ina-add natin to Kaya nga sabi natin, this violates the time value of money kasi hindi naman pwede i-add yung mga cash flows na to. Okay? But anyway, let's go through this. So ang gagawin natin dyan, i-cumulate natin yung cash flows natin. So how do we cumulate? We sum. Sum natin itong cash flow natin, okay, here. And then we press shift, then caret. No? Shift and then colon. Kuha natin colon. Kasi we're going to copy this. If i-fix natin yung unang number, okay, so let me highlight this. And then mag-F4 ako. Okay? So ang i-fix ko dyan yung column B. Kasi I'll be copying the formula along row 94. Hindi naman nagbabago si row 94, so no need to fix row 94. Okay? So here. Okay, there. So what does this mean? Ibig sabihin nito guys, initially nag-invest tayo ng 1.2, ano? After year 1, makaka-recover tayo ng 420. Ang kulang na lang natin na dapat i-recover 780. At year 2, meron na naman tayong cash flow ng 480. Therefore, yung 780 bawasan natin ng 480. 300 na lang yung i-recover natin. Come year 3, naging positive na to. Ibig sabihin, okay, na-recover na natin yung cash flows. Okay, so that's what we call the payback period. So how do you compute for the payback period? Kailan ba yung transition? So it's year 2. No? Okay, so sa year 2, after year 2 saka na-recover yung initial investment. And then ilang years? No? Ilang years. So we're going to add plus. Ilan na lang ba i-recover natin? Ito. 300 na lang yung kulang natin. Tapos ilan ba yung makukuha sa year 3? Ito, yung 320. So ipoprorate lang natin yan. So naka-negative to, I'm going to remove the negative sign, negative, para maging positive siya. And then divided by how much cash flow are we getting on year 3? Ito, 320. So ibig sabihin nun guys, naka-prorated, no? Okay, out of yung kulang natin na 300, makakakuha tayo ng 320 sa year 3. Therefore, control enter, there. Okay, ang assumption yan guys that the cash flows is generated uniformly throughout the whole year. Okay, so 2.94 years, that's the payback period. That's the time it will take the company to recover the initial investment of 1.2 million. Okay, and then we also go to a payback period for Project Z. Sum ulit natin, sum this amount, colon, and then i-fix natin fix only the column B. Okay, control enter. There. Okay, so si Project Z guys, marirecover natin siya after year 3. Paano ko nalaman? Yun ang inflection point. Yun ang nag-change na from negative cumulative cash flow to positive. So that this will be equal to 3 years plus, again, ipoprorate natin to. I'm putting a negative here. Negative ko guys para tama yung ratio natin. Negative of negative, so that's positive. Divided by, magkano yung cash flow na makukuha natin sa year 4? 710. Yeah. Okay, that's why it's 3.58 years. Okay, so it turns out here that si Project Z, mas mahaba yung payback period niya. That's understandable kasi mas malaki yung initial investment niya. Okay, pause muna ako guys. Okay, if you have any questions, give you 1 minute to work.
Can you go back to the cell of payback?
Which one? Payback?
The cell of payback. Thank you, sir.
Okay, any questions, guys? Clear ba yung payback period? So we can see that project Z has a longer payback period, and that's understandable because the initial investment is higher. But in terms of NPV, in terms of MIRR, in terms of profitability index, it points to the fact that project Z is the better investment compared to project Y. Okay, good. Thank you. All right, last guys is our discounted payback. Yung discounted payback, pareho lang yan ng payback. Ang kaibahan lang, hindi natin ginagamit, we're not using the original cash flow, but rather we're using the discount, the present value itself, the discounted cash flow. So i-copy na lang natin dito ito yung mga present values natin, no? Ito for project Y. Okay, so kinopy natin. Okay. So what we're using in a discounted, kasi di ba ang sabi, ibig sabihin discounted, we're using the present values, no? Ang gagamitin natin yung mga present values. Okay, so accumulate ulit natin is equal to sum. Natin copy yung formula dyan sa taas. Control C, Control V. Okay, sum, then copy to the right. All right. So, ang ginagamit natin guys, yung discounted values, not the original values. So easily we can say that the payback period, the discounted payback period for project Y is 4 plus, okay? Ito may ano pa, kulang pa na 50,082 and expected sa year 5 to 09. So that would be negative of this one divided by okay, questions guys? Same thing with the Z, no? So, copy na lang natin present values natin dito sa taas, present value ng Z. Yan. There. So, I copied the present values of project Z. Of course, pwede rin naman natin finormula dito. And then, once again, i-accumulate natin. Pwede natin copyhin to. Copy to the right. Yeah, so it will keep on adding, no? Add. Okay, so our discounted payback will be equal to, so it's between year 4 and year 5. So year 4 plus, get the negative of this, para maging positive siya, divided by the expected cash flow on year 5. Right? I'll give you a few seconds, guys, to work on discounted payback period for project Z.
Sir, what's the formula ulit po for the present value?
Kinapi lang natin ito. Kasi di ba kinumpita natin present values dito? Ito. So I just copied it here. Or pwede nyo is equal to negative PV. No? Okay. Yan lang. Lining ko dun sa B28 sa taas. Or you can, ganun din, you can compute for the negative PV. Ganun din dito si Z. So I'll give you a few more seconds. Okay, when you're done, guys, kindly chat, please. Yes. So that I know when I should continue. So around 35 to 40 minutes pa, guys, for three topics. No? Kakayanan to. By the way, guys, kunyari nag 12:45 na tapos andito na ako sa crossover and you need to leave, you may do so, guys. Leave na lang kayo, no? Pero tatapusin ko lang yung recording nito, okay? So that ang ipopost ko yung recording na natapos na. From my experience kaninang klase, nag-extend ako ng mga 5 minutes. But if you need to go, please do so. Don't have to ask permission. But I'll just finish the recording the solving of this. Okay, so are we okay, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So that's that's how we compute for or evaluate projects using NPV, IRR, MIRR, Profitability Index, payback. Okay, and there are some rules on that. Sabi natin, ang pinaka-paramount dyan, yung NPV. So, si IRR, importante din, but when there's a conflict between NPV and IRR, NPV always prevails. In fact, we can use the MIRR to also compute for the modified internal rate of return. Okay, then we also can use payback period or discounted payback period. This just gives us the number of years it takes us to recover the initial investment. Sabi natin, ito, yung payback period is that it does not consider the time value of money kasi we're using the original cash flows. Ang mas tama dyan is the discounted payback kasi what we're adding up are the discounted cash flows. Okay, so next, guys, let's go to the next worksheet. Okay, ito naman, guys, ito pinapakompute sa atin paano kung unequalized yung mga projects natin. Okay? So because if we compute for the NPV, baka mas malaking NPV yung mas mahabang period, no? Kasi syempre pag mas mahaba yung term life ng project, mas yung mga cash inflows magdadagdag sila sa NPV. Okay? So let's first compute for the NPV. So this is equal to NPV. Okay, ang rate natin, 12%. We don't need to fix this kasi idadagdag naman natin to the right. Meron naman mga 12% dito. Comma. Ano yung mga values natin? Take note, dapat yung i-highlight ko na lahat, no? Total, wala naman yung iba dito so that we can copy everything to the right. Kasi pag i-highlight ko lang may mga values, tapos pag kinopy ko to the right, mamimiss out dito sa iba. No? Okay, so I'm highlighting everything. Okay, so those are the values and then plus yung initial investment natin. Okay, so that's your formula for NPV, guys. The rate and then the cash flows at year 1 from year 1 and then isinama ko lahat. Anyway, 0 naman yung sa year 0 at saka 7. What's the purpose of that? Para pag kinopy ko sa that to the right siya, guys, makakapture yung kay project D. No? Okay, enter. All right. So, as expected, guys, kasi mas maraming years si Project D, mas malaki yung niya, mas malaki yung net present value. Okay? But how do we now decide? Parang unfair yata na parang hindi yata tama yung comparison kasi syempre medyo magiging bias tayo for this one. Kasi may additional na na 90 plus thousand. Okay? Ito 97,000 to, no? Okay, so how do we compute for that? Now, what we do is we annualize the net present value. Okay, ito na tinatawag natin na annualized net present value. How do we do that? What we do, guys, is to divide your net present value with a factor. And you call it the present value interest factor of an annuity. Okay, so let me explain this. So let's get an example ito, no? Itong project A. Let's compute for the present value interest factor of an interest of an annuity of 1. Ibig sabihin nun, okay, so 0, no? 0, 1, 2, ilan yung si So 6, 3, 4, 5, 6. So si project A, 6 siya, di ba? 6 years yung term life niya. Now, what we do is we're going to compute for the present value of an annuity of 1. So ano ibig sabihin nun? Ibig sabihin nun guys, lalagay tayo ng annuity ng 1. This is 1, 1. Okay. Yan, no? So meron tayong 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Annuity yan, ano? Annuity ng 1 for 6 years. Bakit 6 years? Kasi 6 years yung life ni, ni Project A. Okay? Then what we have to do is to compute for the present value of this. Okay? So madaling makuha yung present value niyan. Is equal to negative PV. Para maging positive siya. Negative PV, ang rate natin is 12%. Tama? Ang NPR natin is 6 years to, no? Kama, ang PMT natin is 1. So we look at it as an annuity of 1. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 for 6 years. No? Okay, and then no future value, etc. Control Enter. All right. So this is what we call the annuity, present value interest factor of an annuity of 1. Okay, so kay B, gagawin din natin yon. Pero kay B, 4 years lang. No? So parang ganito. Diba? Tapos kay C, 5 years. Kay C. Tapos kay D, yun, 8 years lahat. Okay? So let's compute for the present value of 1. So this is equal to, yung ginawa natin kanina, negative PV. Alright? Then the rate is 12%. Okay, comma. Yung NPR natin, ilan? Okay, ilan yung periods natin kay A? 6. Kay B, 4. So hindi natin pwedeng ilagay 6 dito, no? Kasi hindi natin madadag yung formula. So what we can do is use this function count A. Count A, guys, ang bibilangin niya yung mga hindi blanks. So I'm going to start with 1. Yan. Take a look at that, guys. So si count A, okay, count A, bibilangin niya to from 1 up to 8. Pero ang bibilangin lang niya yung may mga laman. Count A will ignore the blank cells. So ito, 6 lang talaga yan. Okay? So that will be your NPR. Your PMT is how much? 1. Diba? Annuity of 1 yan eh. Next is face value. Future value, wala namang future value. Type ignore because this is annuity ordinary. There. 4.11. Okay, so since ang ginawa natin count count A, pwede natin makakopy dito yan. There. So tingnan nyo ha. Okay, so ang bibilangin lang niya dyan yung non-blanks. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 to. Okay. So questions about the present value interest factor of an annuity of 1. Okay. So once you have gotten that, guys, pwede na natin i-annualize yung net present value by dividing the net present value with the interest factor. Okay. There you go. So ginagamit lang natin to, guys, i-annualize natin kung hindi magkakapareho yung life ng project. But if they're the same, well, no problem. Kung ano yung lumalabas sa NPV, yun na yun. So based on this, guys, sinong project ang pinakamaganda? Based on an annualized, Sorry? Yes, correct. It's a project B. Tama, no? Kasi highest na net present value siya. Okay, so again, guys, when do we do this? We do this kung yung cash flows natin magkakaibang life. No? That's why we call it unequal lives. So you just can't compare the NPV. You have to annualize it by dividing it by the present value interest factor. Present value interest factor. All right. So B turns out to be the better investment. Okay. So clear ba so far, guys? Paki-chat naman kung yes, so that I can move on to the next worksheet. Okay, thank you so much, guys. Thank you. All right, good. Okay. So ito naman, multiple IRRs. Ito yung pinakita natin kanina, no? Diba yung sa text natin, where you have a case where a project has a cash flow that, syempre yung una negative, kasi initial investment yan eh. But intermediate or at the end, meron pa rin negative. So pag ganyan guys, that's a candidate for a multiple IRRs. Usually dalawa, no? I haven't seen guys na tatlo eh. No? So siguro pag in-expand pa yan, tapos marami pang ibang na negative, baka pwede yan. No? But anyway, how do we compute for the IRR, the two IRRs? So yung una, IRR lang, and then values, yun lang. Okay, so that's 3.91. That is the first, that's the first IRR, no? 3.91. Insert natin. Okay, how do you compute for the next IRR? Ganun din, IRR, highlight the values. Tapos dito na papasok yung guess, guys. Dito na tayo maglalagay ng guess. So, once you have obtained the first IRR, yung lower na IRR, in order to determine the next IRR, what you do is use this guess function. So, kunyari, lagay ko dito, it should be a higher value, no? Higher value than the first IRR. So, I can make this, let's say, 5%. Enter. Wala pa rin, no? Wala pa rin. So pareho pa rin, 3.91 pa rin. Why don't I make it 10%? Wala pa rin, no? So medyo trial and error. Taas ko pa 15%, let's see. Yun. Okay, nagbago na, no? So dalawa yung ano natin, dalawa yung IRR. Yung isa 3.91, yung isa 30.28. And we know that at 3.91, okay, the project will be the NPV will be 0. Ganun din sa at 30.28% na IRR. Okay, so what we do now guys is to plot natin yung NPV profile natin, no? So we can start with 0%. So maglista lang tayo dito ng up to 40% na may increments of 2. So you know how to do that guys. I start with 0%, fill, home, tapos fill, then series, no? And then I want it in columns. Step value, let's make it increment by 2%. And then stop value, let's make it up to 40%. Yeah. Okay? All right. Okay, so we have that now. We have these figures now. 0% hanggang 40%. Now what we're going to do with this is we're going to insert here yung IRR natin. So see 3.91, that's between 2% and 4%. Okay. Mag-increase ako dito, then it's equal to 3.91%. Ako lang dito. And then see 30.28, that should be after 30%. This is equal to 30.28%. Bigyan ko na lang. All right, so we can now compute guys for the, sorry. Mali Galaw ko to dito. Ito yung WACC natin, tapos ito yung NPV natin, no? So let's compute for the NPV. So this is equal to NPV. Let me increase the font. So this is equal to NPV. All right. Rate natin will be this one. So papakompute natin yung mga NPVs based on the following rates, comma, values natin, di ba ito? Then yung values natin. Then we have to fix that. If you can fix the row, kasi kakopy natin ito pababa. So you don't need to fix the column. And then, okay. Ayun na yan, no? So rate and then the values. Okay, control enter. Tanggalin natin dollar. Number na lang, number. Okay, then we can click this down. Yan. Okay, take note guys that at the IRR, itong 3.91, yan, no? 0 yung NPV, di ba? Ganun din si 30.28, 0 din siya. Okay, so let's now plot this. So insert, insert, and then let me use a scatter plot. Insert. So use this one. There. Okay, so we can see here guys yung NPV profile natin, no? NPV profile natin. Okay, so you can see here guys na ito yung NPV profile. It touches the x-axis twice, no? Ito yung 30.28 at saka ito yung 3.91. Ibig sabihin at these 2 points, 0 yung NPV natin. 0 dito, 0 dito. As indicated here. Okay? Tingnan natin guys. At 3.91%, 0 yung NPV. Dito nga siya. Tapos dito, 0 din yung 30.20. Okay, any questions for this one guys before we go to the last one? So ito na yung multiple IRRs. No? So kailan nangyayari ito? This happens when you have a cash flow that's negative other than the initial investment. It can be in the middle, can be at the last. No? So ito kita natin yung NPV profile na to. Okay, unlike other NPVs guys, unlike other projects where iisa lang yung pababa lang yung yung NPV profile, no? Just like the figure that we showed a while ago, ito, no? Ito. Si Project GT na nyo guys, no? Pababa lang siya. Si Project F pababa lang siya. Eh, hindi siya katulad ng isa na parang concave na may pataas pa, no? Just like this one. Yan. So this only happens when you have a cash flow that's negative aside from the initial investment. Okay. Now we're going to plot this. Ito na, no? So dalawang projects tayo, tapos titingnan natin. So ang objective nito, ganito. Kailan mas okay piliin si Project F? Kailan mas okay piliin si Project G? So this only happens, guys, when there's a conflict between NPV and IRR. Kung walang conflict si NPV at saka si IRR, hindi magko-crossover yan. Mangyayari yan, laging yung isa nasa taas. No? Okay, I hope that's clear. There will only be a crossover. Ang ibig sabihin ng crossover, magpapalit yung decision natin. No? Before this rate, lower than this rate, choose Project G kasi mas mataas yung NPV ni Project G compared to Project F. But beyond this WACC, beyond this weighted average cost of capital, then choose Project E already. Kasi mas mataas yung NPV ni Project F pala, I mean. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now here. Okay, let's go to the last. Itong crossover, no? So we have two projects. They have the same WACC. Let's give this a name. Let's call it WACC 1. Isa kanina WACC na. I'm going to call it WACC 1. Okay. And we have the cash flows for Project S and Project L. Okay, so you notice si Project S, initial cash flow niya negative. Of course, as positive na dito. So, walang ano to, iisa lang yung IRR nito. Okay, ito din, iisa lang yung IRR. Kasi wala namang negative dun sa after the first year. So let's now compute for the NPV, the IRR, and the IRR. Okay. NPV natin is equal to NPV. Okay, ang rate natin is 10%. And WACC 1, no need to fix that. Value natin, remember, it will be this one, guys. Okay. And then plus the year 0. Okay. There. Lagyan ko lang ng formula siguro. Next, so that you can check. Okay, then we just copy this. Copy lang natin to dito. No? How about IRR? Straightforward, IRR, values. No need for the guess, guys, kasi wala naman negative sa intermediate ano yan, or last. That's simply your IRR. And lastly, your MIRR, MIRR. Okay, so that's your values natin lahat, comma. Finance rate is your WACC 1, comma. Investment rate is your WACC 1 also. Okay, there. Okay, so based on NPV, guys, project L is the better project, diba? And then based on IRR, project S is the better project. Okay, so may conflict dun sa NPV at saka IRR, then that means, guys, may crossover to. There will be a crossover. Ano yung crossover, guys? Magpapalit yung decision natin kung project L ba o project S. Okay, let me just insert here. Okay. So, gagawin natin, guys, again, parang yung kanina, maglalagay tayo dito ng ano maglalagay din tayo ng mga weight ng ano dito, ng WACC dito. Pero kailangan muna natin i-compute, guys, no? Kailan yung crossover nila? Ang ibig sabihin ng crossover, kailan ano yung WACC na it doesn't matter kung project S or project L yung ano natin, yung pipiliin. So we can do that, no? How do we compute for that? Okay. So we first compute for the NPV. NPV ni S, alam natin yan, is just ang gagamitin natin rate ito, no? Not the WACC 1. Ito, guys, ito. Okay, so let me fix that. Yan ang solve natin kung ano yung WACC na yan. So that's the rate, and then the values are, sabi natin, yung first year, okay, and then plus the year 0. So this is the NPV for project S. Control Enter. And then we can copy this there. Okay, and then we get the difference is equal to NPV ni S minus NPV ni L. Okay, so lagay ko lang yung formula dito. Formula text. Okay, so ito yung formula niya, no? Tapos ito naman. Just for your reference. Okay. So ito yung formula nito, guys. Tsaka ito naman, yung NPV. All right. Then, we know, guys, that in order for us to be indifferent to project S or project L, kailangan yung NPV sila pareho. So we would want this to be 0. Okay. Yun ang crossover point natin. So dapat yung difference ng NPV ni project S at saka yung project L, they should be 0. Okay, we're indifferent. We don't care whether we choose project S or we choose project L, since they have the same net present values. If they have the same net present values, then their differences will be 0. Okay, so let's compute for that. You know how to do that, guys? Okay, paano yun? Data, and then what if analysis, goal seek. There. Goal seek natin. Okay, so sino i-goal seek natin? Itong difference. Set the difference to value equal to 0. Okay? By changing this cell. So pasolve natin kung ano tong weighted average cost of capital na to para yung NPV ni project S at saka NPV ni project L will be the same, no? They will be the same, tapos okay.
Yung isa naman sa sasakyan na walang ilaw.
Okay?
Puro sound lang naman yun.
Renz, paki-unmute na lang, ha?
Puro sound lang, sabi niya.
Renz,
Hindi mo naman.
kindly unmute, please.
Sabi ko naman.
Renz,
Isa pa? Tayo?
Renz, kindly unmute, please, Renz.
Oo, sabi mo ata. Isa pa tayo.
Ano na-mute sa kanya? Okay, so ito na yung ano natin, guys, yung indifference point natin. Okay, at this cost of capital, pareho lang NPV nila. So we're indifferent to Project S or Project L. So sa plot natin yan guys, dun sila mag-meet. No? Sa plot natin dito, dun sila mag-meet si Project S at saka si Project L. Okay, so let's do this now. Again, mag-create tayo ng, list. So from 0%, gawin natin 1%. Let's home tayo, home. And then mag-fill tayo. Home. Fill tayo. Series. In columns, no? In columns. Step value natin, let's make it increment by 1%. Stop value natin will be, gawin natin up to 30%. No? Okay, up to 30%. In column siya. If sinulat ko muna yung 0%, no? Increment of 1% hanggang 30%. Okay, there. Alright? So hanggang 30% yan. Ngayon, ipasok natin itong mga to, no? Itong 5 to. No? We're going to insert here. IRR ni let me start with yung pinakamaliit, 11.975. So that should be here. Insert ko dito. So this is equal to 11.795. No? Ilagyan ko lang ng kulay para there. Okay, so this is your indifference, no? Sabihin, we don't care if we choose project S or project L. Okay. Then we have, let's see, 12.1. Pasok natin si 12.1. Dito. Lagyan ko dito si 12.1. 12.1. Okay? Lagyan ko lang ng color para alam ko na ito yung mga insert natin. This is the MIRR ni Y. No? And then 12.7, dito din pala. No? 12.7, so this is equal to 12.7 ito. No? 12.7. So this is the MIRR, Control C, Control V. This is the MIRR of Z. Lalagyan ko lang ng labels. Okay, ano pa? Ito, IRR, no? IRR ni Z, 13.5, so it should be here. IRR ni Z is equal to this one. Okay, so this is IRR of Z. And then last, 14.5, and we're putting it after 14%. It's equal to this one. Okay, all right. So what we have done was to insert these relevant points, no? Indifference, MIRRY, MIRZ. Pero actually, ang pinaka-importante lang dyan yung indifference, pati yung dalawang IRRs. But anyway, pinasok pa rin natin si MIRR. Okay? Tapos, we're going to link this, no? Ililink ko siya kay Project S dito. There. So this is the NPV of Project S. And then this one is the Project L. So ang gagawin natin dito guys, we will ask Excel to replace yung WACC na to na 10%. Papalitan niya ng 0, 1, 1, 2, etc. And then ilalagay niya dito yung mga values ng NPV. Okay, so that's what we're going to do here. All right, so let's now highlight everything. Highlight everything there. Okay, so we use data, and then what if analysis ulit, and then ito na yung data table guys. Okay, so this is a very convenient way to fill up these figures. Okay, so column input cell natin, ito, no? Kasi column yung data natin, no? Column input cell. So saan natin ilalagay, guys? Saan ilalagay? Dito, no? Okay. Ito yung data natin. 0%. So saan sinasabi natin kay Excel, ilagay niya yung 0 dito, ilagay niya yung 1 dito, ilagay niya yung 2. So ilalagay niya isa-isa yan. Yung mga values ng WACC natin. Tapos whatever value is here on top, whatever value here, then ilalagay niya dito yon. Kasi mga NPVs to eh. So ilalagay niya yung mga NPVs dito. So let's see. Okay. There. Yan yung mga NPVs, guys. So take note, guys, sa IRR, di ba ano nangyari? Di ba ang NPV natin magkapareho sila? Di ba? So this is the indifference point. Okay? Sa IRR ni Z, guys, ano nangyari? IRR ni Z, that's the point when the NPV of Z is 0. Sa IRR ni Y, that's the point when the NPV of Y is 0. Okay, so consistent with the concept of NPV. Okay? So we can now plot this. Plot natin tong mga WACC natin. At saka yung nangyari dito. Hindi nasama sa format. Okay. Alright. So, very quickly guys, kung titingnan natin, ito yung indifference point natin, di ba? So what does this tell us? If the weighted average cost of capital is at 11.975%, kahit ano pipiliin natin. If the weighted average cost of capital is below 11.975, then choose Project L. Bakit? Kasi below 11.975, tingnan nyo guys, mas mataas lahat lagi yung NPV ni Project L. Okay? Now, below 11.975, okay? Sino pipiliin natin? 12%, 12.1. Sino pipiliin natin guys? Sino? Si Project S na. No? Kasi guys, pag higher than 11.975, mas mataas yung NPV ni Project S. Diba dito guys? Okay? Alright. Hanggang 14.5%, okay, si Project S pa rin tayo. Kasi sa 14.5% na WACC, at least si Project S, NPV niya 0, no? Okay? Now, higher than 14.5%, wala na tayong pipiliin dyan. Kasi pareho na negative yung yung NPV nila. So this is the story of these projects, Project S and Project L. So may crossover tayo, no? Yung crossover natin 11.1975. Below 11.975, sino pipiliin guys? Choose Project L. Okay? Higher than 11.975 hanggang 14.5%, choose Project S. Okay? Above 14.5%, okay, walang pipiliin. No? We're not going to choose any project if the weighted average cost of capital is higher than 14.5%. Okay, so let's plot this. Okay, highlight natin. Tapos insert. Insert. Okay. Okay. Alright. Medyo nagka-ano ko dito. Okay. Ba't may ganito dito? Okay, anyway guys, sige. It's already time. But if you click this, mag-unhide tayo, no? Unhide. There's one worksheet here that I have hidden, yung crossover one. Click natin to. Okay, so pareho lang yung guys, pareho lang It's the same thing. Pero this is now the correct plot. And you have here the conclusion. So ito yung mga plots natin. Ito yung crossover natin. Ito. Ito yung crossover point natin. This one. Tapos, ito yung IRR ni Z. Ito yung IRR ni L, IRR ni S. So, below 11.97, okay, sino pipiliin natin? Si Project L. Ito siya, yung blue. This is Project L. Tingnan nyo to, no? There. Ito naman, so below 11.97%, Project L tayo kasi mas mataas yung NPV niya. However, ito guys, okay, higher than 11.97, we choose Project S kasi mas mataas yung NPV ni Project S natin hanggang 14.49%. Okay? Higher than 14.49%, pareho na negative yung NPV nila. So wala na tayong pipiliin sa kanila. Okay, so all right. So that's it, guys. That addresses our capital budgeting. So galing, no? Kasi magaling kayo, guys. Nakuha nyo kasi in one sitting nakuha natin NPV, IRR, MIRR, unequal lives, multiple IRRs, and the crossover point. Okay, paki-check na lang, guys, kung bakit nagkakaan dito. Paki-check na lang yung pag-plot natin ito. Okay, so it's time, guys. Thank you. Konti lang yung na-extend natin. Are there any questions? Okay, so
Hello, sir.
yung magpapacheck ng attendance. The rest, guys, thank you so much. You may leave. Sino magpapacheck ng attendance?
Lapis po, sir.
Lapus.
Opo.
Lapus. Okay, thank you, Isabel. Okay, who else?
Molina po.
Sino?
Escobar po.
Escobar. Okay. Nike, thank you.
Thank you po.
Thank you. Who else?
Sir, ilaw po.
Ilaw. Ralph.
Yes po.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you,
Ralph.
sir.
Thank you.
Sir
else?
Kataran po.
Kataran. Kataran, Bryce. Okay, thank you,
Sir.
Bryce. Yes?
Sir,
Sir,
may concern.
Sandali, attendance muna. Sino pa?
Sige po.
Ngu.
Ha?
Ngu. NGU po.
Carl. Okay. Okay, thank you, Carl. So next. Any more?
Molina po, sir.
Molina. Molina, Jasmine. Okay, thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, so sino may concern?
Ako po, sir.
Sino to? Bryce. Oh, Bryce.
Apo. Sir, nag-message po ako sa inyo sa Facebook regarding
Yung-
dun sa reading assignments po.
Sa leading assignment. Sige, kasi pag kahit na in-adjust ko yung date sa dun sa McGraw-Hill, hindi na yata mag-a-adjust yung grades. Anyway, in-inform mo ako. So
Yes po,
siguro
sir.
anong oras ba? Mamaya sino to? Bryce, i-PM mo ako para iayusin ko yung yung rating mo doon, ha?
Okay po. Sir,
You're free.
nag-update na po pala yung sa isa, yung sa 7th reading assignment. Last time po kasi yung 5 at 6 yung hindi nag-reflect. Ay, 5, 6, 7. Yun po, meron na ba yung sa 7?
Sige, tingnan natin mamayang afternoon. Kung wala pa rin, i-adjust ko, ha?
Okay po. Thank you,
Sige.
sir.
Thank you, Bryce.
Hello, sir.
Yes, who's this?
Enzo po.
Enzo. Oh, Enzo.
Just a question, sir.
Yes, Enzo.
For this Saturday's quiz, what will be the coverage?
Itong tong capital budgeting and NPV IRR at saka yung sa Wednesday, yung cost of
Okay.
capital.
Okay,
Okay, don't miss it, ha?
yes, sir. Thank you.
Sige, thank you. Any more questions? Okay, thank you, Amy. Thank you.